Today I'm going to talk about setting thread tensions. I'm going to briefly go over the bottom tension. I'm going to go over the top thread tension. I want to talk about some of the reasons why you need to change your settings, some of the things that cause you to need to do that, and basically just kind of cover some of the high points. So I'm using this old zigzag machine. The zigzag stitch is going to help me show you some of the subtleties of the difference between too tight or too loose. The zigzag is going to show up on camera a little better. Also, I've got a white thread on the bottom and a red thread on the top. Alright, so this is the bobbin case, and yours is probably going to look a little different. This is kind of an old machine, and there's not too many that look like this, but they're all basically the same. And the part you want to look for is where the thread comes out under this leaf spring. There's two screws. Now this screw, it just holds the leaf spring on. So this screw closest to the opening, this is the one that does the adjustment. And much like the top tensioner, the screw, you turn it to the right to tighten the tension, and you turn it to the left to loosen the tension. So it's right tight, left loose, kind of a little moniker to help you remember. Or some people say righty tighty, lefty loosey. Okay, so what you're looking for, a lot of times I will just test it by pull, but if you're not familiar with what you're going for there, one of the kind of little tests you can do is it should support itself, but a little bit of jostling will get it to move down. So that's about the tension you want. A lot of times people say don't touch the tension on the bottom. It might be necessary in some cases if you're not comfortable with it. This one just has to be close, and you can make fine adjustments with the top one. If you're making big changes in your thread sizes, then this may need adjustment for your application. But this is not an everyday adjustment, but it is one to be aware of. This is the top thread tensioner. You tighten it down to tighten the tension, and you loosen it to loosen the tension. You may have numbers. The numbers will, as you turn the knob to the right, the numbers will get bigger. It is basically the same thing, just with a set of numbers on top of it to make it a little easier, but the principle is the same. Now what I've done here is I've purposely set the tension very low. The upper tension is too light, and what you get is a lot of times what people call that is a bird's nest. So if you ever see that, there's nothing wrong with your machine. Your upper tension is too light. Alright, so this first pass I'm going to make is with the tension set too loose. And I think you can see that there's red thread coming through on the bottom. And so whenever that's the case, the top thread is too loose. So this is your top thread, and of course it looks pretty good from this side, but when you come down here you can see that because the top thread is coming down so far, the zigzag on the back side is starting to be malformed. So in order to fix that, we'll tighten the top thread. Now on this next pass, I've actually set the machine, the top tension too tightly, just so we can see what that looks like. Okay, now when we look at the bottom, it's all white, and the zigzag stitch looks good, like it's supposed to. But on the top, we are starting to see the bottom thread be pulled to the top. So the top thread now is so tight that it's pulling the bottom thread to the top. Whereas on this one, the top thread was being pulled to the bottom by the bottom thread. So it's basically kind of a tug of war between the top thread and the bottom thread. So you want to match that tension so that it doesn't get pulled too far this way or that way and meets right in the middle, buried in the fabric. Now on this third pass, I've got the tension set pretty well. So this is the one we set. It's got red on the top, white on the bottom. Maybe just a little bit of red down here. When you're dealing with one layer of fabric, you've got to be pretty precise to get that junction right in the fabric. So if you'll just do a few test runs, you can start to get it tweaked in. Now I can just barely see the red on the bottom now. I don't see any white on the top. Just dial it in a little tighter. Okay. Now that junction, I can just barely see it. I can see just a tiny bit of white here, and I can see just a tiny bit of red here, so they're basically meeting. I've only got one piece of denim to hide that joint in, and that's about as good as you can get it. Now when you of course use the same colored thread, that's going to be close enough to where you've got a stitch that'll be appropriately tensioned and look good. So to recap, here's where we started on this side, too loose and then too tight with all the white showing, and then these three I was just about right. So again, too loose, you can see the red over here, and then too tight, and then getting it dialed in. Finally, this one being just about right. So I've talked about the bottom thread tensioner, and I've talked about the top thread tensioner. Like I say, the bottom one is not one that you normally need to change, but there are situations where you may. The top thread tensioner is typically where you make your adjustments, and just because you have it set for one project doesn't mean you'll never need to set it again. So tensions will need to change with varying conditions, the main of which are a change in thread. If your thread is thicker, then the way this works, the tension will become tighter. That may or may not be what you need. So when your thread thickness changes, you may need to change your tension. Also, some threads are slicker or more stiff than others. That might require a change. The thickness of a project may necessitate a change in thread tension as well. So that's the basics of thread tension. I hope something in there helped. Thanks.